Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm doing another PragerU response video, and I think PragerU is finally getting to me. Like they're gradually, slowly deconverting me from my social justice warrior ways. So maybe this video will be the final nail in my coffin. Right now we got preferred pronouns or prison. So right off the bat with them spicy hot takes, this is going to be good. All right, let's do this.
If you want to control people's thoughts, begin by controlling their words. That's totalitarian thinking. It was once completely foreign to America.
Whoa, wait, oh, wow, that was fast, okay. So this was once completely foreign to America, being compelled to speak in a certain way. When exactly was this foreign to America? Was it back in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement when the FBI was spying on and harassing and threatening civil rights leaders, peaceful civil rights leaders like MLK? Was it back in the 50s during the McCarthy trials? Was it throughout the 20th century when students could be expelled from schools for not pledging allegiance to the flag? When exactly was this mystical, magical time that she's referring to in American history where people were not compelled to speak in a certain way? I'm genuinely curious.
Not anymore. Increasingly, Americans are forced to use language against their will or even their conscience, or be prepared to suffer the consequences.
Yeah, social pressure in this way, that's not a new thing. If you're with a group of friends and you all of a sudden start throwing out some super racist shit, then your friends might not like you as much anymore, and they might not want to be around you. This kind of social pressure is not a new thing, and it's definitely not a conspiracy by the left.
And those consequences can be dire. Take, for example, the issue of transgenderism, the newest civil rights battle of our time. A decade ago, few people could even tell you what the word transgender meant. Today, expressing the wrong opinion on the issue can cost you your business or job or both. Consider recent state and local actions punishing those who decline to use an individual's pronouns of choice. In 2017, California Governor Jerry Brown signed legislation threatening jail time for healthcare professionals who willfully and repeatedly refuse to use a patient's preferred pronouns.
Okay, so this law that she's referring to in California, I looked into it. PolitiFact has an article about it, and what this bill did is add transgender people to anti-discrimination laws, and specifically it talked about treatments of trans people who live in nursing homes. And according to PolitiFact, this bill, if a person who works at a nursing home continuously and maliciously harasses a transgender person living in the nursing home to the extent where it could endanger their physical health and well-being or even their life, then that person could be subjected to a misdemeanor. So basically, they treat it as basically on the same level as a smoking ban in nursing homes. So she is far exaggerating what this bill is and what the scope of this bill is. It basically puts harassing trans people on the same level as a misdemeanor offense.
Under guidelines issued in 2015 by New York City's Commission on Human Rights, employers, landlords, and business owners who intentionally use the wrong pronoun with transgender workers and tenants face potential fines of as much as $250,000. That's a steep price for saying he instead of she instead of he, or even he or she instead of they.
Okay, so this one sucked to research because I actually had to read this whole goddamn bill to find out what this was about. I'm exaggerating, it wasn't that long. But anyways, so the scope of this bill was actually a lot more broad than what she's making it out to be right now. Included in this is along the same lines as this California bill. It added trans people to anti-discrimination protections, and it expanded on anti-discrimination protections that already existed. And it didn't stop at misgendering someone. The bill also included things like you can't keep a trans woman out of domestic abuse women's shelters for appearing too masculine. A landlord cannot evict a trans person for being trans. A boss cannot fire a trans person for being trans. And once again, much like this California law, to have the full extent of the punishments carried out, you would have to be harassing a trans person in such a way that there is a very real threat to their physical well-being or their life. So she's caricaturing it as if you misgender someone and you continuously do it, you're going to get a $250,000 fine. That is not true. You have to do it to such an extent that their physical health and lives are being risked by this kind of harassment.
What about the vast majority of citizens who hold the biology-based view that chromosomes determine your sex, male or female? Or those who have a deep-seated religious conviction that sex is both biological and binary, God's purposeful creation? In December of 2018,
having anti-discrimination protections for trans people doesn't mean you can't think that way. You can think whatever shitty, wrong things you want about trans people, you just can't be a dick to them if you're in a position of power above them.
Peter Vlaming was fired from his job as a French language teacher in a Virginia school district because he refused to refer to a transgender student by the student's preferred pronouns. Vlaming's Christian belief prevented him from bowing before the notion that the student who had been a she in his class the year before was now suddenly a he. Vlaming was willing to use the student's chosen new name, but he avoided using any pronouns when referring to this student. That wasn't good enough for the school district. They needed to hear him say the words.
Okay, I want to throw out some hypotheticals based on this anecdote that they gave here. Let's imagine that the roles were reversed and we had a transgender student who continuously verbally harassed a white, straight, male Christian teacher, saying things like, "Oh, your God is fake. Oh, white man, you bigot, you racist, you homophobe." And after this continued onslaught, some kind of, whatever have you, a student body council pulled this trans person aside and said, "Hey, maybe you should stop verbally harassing the teacher. You can't really do that at this school." And they continued to do it anyway. And then this student was expelled as a result. Do you think that PragerU would make a video including this as an example of someone's free speech being infringed upon? You might say that yes, they would. I would say that you're wrong. I say hell no, they would not, because it does not fit into their narrative. Another example. Dennis Prager, the person who runs PragerU, he's a Jewish man. So let's take out trans from this equation for a second, and let's imagine we're talking about a Christian teacher and a Jewish student. And this Christian teacher, based on his religious convictions, is not particularly fond of Jewish people, and he continuously uses anti-Semitic language and uses anti-Semitic stereotypes, anti-Semitic slurs against this student. And then the teacher loses his job as a result of this. Do you think that PragerU would include that as an example of someone's free speech being restricted in an undue way? I don't believe that they would, because I don't think that the people over at PragerU have a principled stance on the issue of free speech or anti-discrimination laws.
You don't have to be religious to believe that one person can never be a they. The Supreme Court has clearly decided that compelled speech is not free speech. In West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, the Supreme Court upheld the student's right to refuse to salute an American flag. Justice Robert Jackson wrote, "If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, religion, or other matters of opinion." And, Jackson went on to say, the state can't force people to say things they don't believe. But this is precisely what's happening.
Okay, so interesting to note that they use this example of the students not saluting the American flag. So let's talk about anti-discrimination laws. What is the aim of anti-discrimination laws? Anti-discrimination laws serve to protect marginalized or vulnerable people from people in positions of power. This is why because of anti-discrimination laws, say a business owner cannot use racial slurs to address a person of color who is their employee, or cannot fire someone for being a person of color, or refuse to hire them for being a person of color. And a landlord cannot evict a tenant for being gay. Things along that nature. Anti-discrimination laws serve to protect vulnerable people from people who have power. But in this instance, this example that they give, they talk about how a student had their First Amendment right protected to not have to salute the flag. A student is in a position of vulnerability when it comes to a teacher. A teacher is in a position of power and authority above a student. A landlord is in a position of authority over their tenants. A boss is in a position of power when it comes to their employees. So it's interesting to note that whenever it fits their narrative, they'll talk about people in positions of vulnerability having their First Amendment rights protected, but that they will almost always, in other circumstances, side with the people who are in positions of power when it comes to anti-discrimination laws.
People are forced to refer to others as they or co or thon. Yes, those are now considered pronouns.
I would love to see this dystopian hellscape that reactionaries think the country is, where you can be taken to the communist gulags for not calling someone con. That's quite an interesting plane of existence they think the world is. Continue.
Might otherwise be a courtesy, now has criminal consequences. In most contexts, I would have no problem addressing others in any manner they chose, and I'm sure most Americans feel the same. But the Constitution's protection of free speech neither begins nor ends with good manners. It extends all the way from rudeness to meekness, protecting those who hurl insults and those who would prefer to say nothing at all.
Okay, so if in the hypothetical scenario where this dystopian world that they think is coming their way, people on the right, where people are being thrown in prison for misgendering someone, then I would totally be on their side. It doesn't matter how much of a dick you are in your personal life and what kind of shitty things you say, you should be not thrown in prison for voicing an unpopular opinion. But that is not what these anti-discrimination laws do. Again, they protect the rights and the freedoms of marginalized and vulnerable groups from people in positions of power.
If the state can compel the use of certain words, it can force those who differ into silence. It can force its citizens to parrot beliefs they do not hold. The Fairfax County School
Once again, you don't have to believe anything particular about trans people. You can be the biggest transphobe on the planet and have as many bigoted views about them as you want and still do them the courtesy of addressing them by their desired pronouns.
to parrot beliefs they do not hold. The Fairfax County School District in Virginia removed the phrase biological gender from its curriculum and replaced it with the phrase sex assigned at birth.
Oh my God, clutch my pearls. The commies are coming for my dictionaries.
This is how the left legislates away the concept of biological sex without ever having to make the argument, without ever having to convince anyone. They're trying to make sex assigned at birth as trivial and malleable as name assigned at birth, as if some doctor arbitrarily chose for you on the day you were born.
Okay, this is not true. Obviously, biological sex characteristics and differences between biological sexes exist. Nobody is denying that people exist who have penises or people who have vaginas. What what people on the left are doing is making the argument that there is a distinction between biological sex and gender. Biological sex refers to the collection of biological sex traits that a person has. Gender refers to the social attachments and social stereotypes associated with these biological factors. No one is trying to say that biological sex is not based in reality. At least nobody who is serious about this issue. But of course, PragerU is not going to discuss this distinction between biological sex and gender, because the people at PragerU are not interested in coming to any kind of real or substantive understanding of this issue.
To the extent that the transgender movement seeks to promote compassion for those who struggle with their biological sex, we should be grateful for it. To the extent that it seeks to use government power to regulate our perspectives, commanding that we ignore biology and common sense,
Again, you're not being compelled to ignore biology or whatever. You can hold whatever views you want, but if you are in a position of power and you use your position of power to infringe upon other people's rights and their freedoms, their rights to go to a school that they're paying a lot of money for and getting a good education without being harassed by teachers or faculty, or the right of someone to live in a house and be able to do as they please as adults without getting evicted for being gay or trans or what have you, that's fair. I don't know what else to say. That should be a protection that we have in our society, and that's what anti-discrimination laws do. They protect vulnerable people from people of power.
we should resist it.
Another thing on this, do you honestly think that PragerU would make a video talking about other anti-discrimination issues? Like, do they really have a principled stance on this issue? Can you imagine PragerU putting out a video where they said that it is acceptable for a business owner to use racial slurs against an employee of color? Do you think they'd make that argument? I sure as hell don't. But that's what we are discussing here. This is what anti-discrimination laws do. They protect these particular groups of people. And if you really wanted to be principled and consistent on the issue of anti-discrimination laws, then PragerU needs to put out a video telling us all why it is perfectly acceptable for a business owner to use his freedom of speech to fire someone for being black or to use racial slurs against people of color in the workplace. Please, go ahead, PragerU, make that video. I know that you won't, because you're not principled on this issue.
This is no small issue. The Constitution guarantees freedom of speech so that political issues can be worked out in the public square. But the activist left doesn't want that conversation to occur. They want to force the adoption of their conclusions before the argument even begins.
No, they don't. Once again, you don't have to believe something particular about trans people to be respectful of them.
Compelled speech is the tactic they've chosen. It's unconstitutional, it's undemocratic, and it's wrong.
If there's a popular vote in a city or a state or the country that says that trans people are included in anti-discrimination protections and a majority of people vote for it, then that's not undemocratic. That's the opposite of undemocratic. That is democracy at work.
If gender activists prevail, we may be left with a world we neither recognize nor like very much. We won't be able to communicate our displeasure. We will have lost the words.
This lady here on PragerU is worried that she is going to lose the words to convey certain ideas, and that the government is going to come and stamp down on her right to free speech. She's on PragerU. PragerU has over 2 million subscribers. This video alone has nearly 2 million views, and she's talking about how she's going to be compelled to think or speak in a certain way. Give me a break.
I'm Abigail Schreier for Prager University.
Alright, well, thanks for that, Abigail. Alright, we made it through another PragerU video. I'm tired. I have to do this. I have to practice this a lot so I don't mush mouth my way through it, but we got through this. So thank you guys for watching. Tell me what else I should talk about. I would like to branch away from PragerU videos at some point because I am so tired of PragerU videos. So please give me some suggestions as to what I should respond to or what you want me to talk about in a future video. MK Vanguard, signing out.